Deadly Premonition 2 has issues, let's just say. It's got a number of issues. Deadly Premonition 2 was my most anticipated game of 2020 in a year where there wasn't much to anticipate, but yet more death and destruction and horror and terror and misery. That seems to be a number of running themes throughout 2020 as a whole. Unfortunately, due to an absolutely atrocious, unforgivable frame rate and some other content we'll get into, the whole experience left a sour taste in my mouth at a time where my sense of disillusionment with video games overall is at an all-time high. I'm just very sick and tired of the mainstream video game industry and the media surrounding it overall. So it was very disappointing that Deadly Premonition 2 was, first and foremost, very painful to play, in terms of literally causing pain to my eyes. Because the frame rate was dog shit, and not in a haha Deadly Premonition is so bad it's good way. That's one thing that really annoyed me when the reviews went out and my video went out at the same time, and so many of them talked about the frame rate, and the response from a lot of people who hadn't played the game yet was, the frame rate's bad? That just sounds like good news for Deadly Premonition fans. Well, few people are more famed for their love of Deadly Premonition than me, so it should have said a lot that I would complain about a technical issue in a Deadly Premonition game. Instead, one of the responses to my complaints was, well, if you're not a fan of the first game, you probably won't like the frame rate in this. What? The point about the frame rate in Deadly Premonition 2 is that it was so rubbish that it went beyond the pale even for Deadly Premonition. There's a difference between something being clunky and broken and a little bit shitty but charming at the same time, like a lot of stuff Focus Home Interactive publishes, and something that is just literally painful. Something so overwhelmingly broken that it gets in the way of everything else. And that was my issue with Deadly Premonition 2 to begin with. It was so overwhelmingly in the way that when I started playing it, I thought, I'm not going to be able to talk about much else. It's all they're going to want to focus on. And that was before York started dead-naming trans people and doing wacky racial accents. And those are the two big main issues with Deadly Premonition 2. You've got that utterly broken frame rate, the one that is too bad for Deadly Premonition, and the sketchy content. Now, both of these have been addressed. Now I'm going to talk about the frame rate first, because there's a subset of gamers TM who get irrationally upset when their narrow definition of politics gets brought up. And their narrow definition of politics basically means it's political whenever someone acknowledges the mere existence of trans people, or people of colour, or gay people, or just women. You only need to look at some of the responses to The Last of Us Part 2 merely having a trans character in it, and how many people said they were being too political. So when people say get politics out of my games, what they really mean is get trans people, get gay people, get people of colour, get women out of my games. That's what they're saying. And because my platform is an inclusive one, I don't want to turn those people away, so we'll talk about the frame rate first. Then we'll get political. So the weird little subset of gamers who think the existence of a queer person is political, but the themes of nuclear disarmament in Metal Gear Solid isn't, can get their fix of gameplay and graphics news and forget everything else exists. They can watch up to that bit of the video, then go away, and then no one will be upset or feel like politics are being forced into their eyeballs. So anyway, Swery65 says they're looking at trying to fix the frame rate. They're hoping to do that. That's that bit. That's it. Hopefully the frame rate will get fixed. Now, let's talk about the other shit. One of the most uncomfortable aspects of Deadly Premonition 2 is its representation of trans people. There's a trans character in the game, and they're one of the primary antagonistic forces, which itself is a bit of an issue when there are so few positive trans representative characters in media to balance out the amount that are presented as aberrant, deviant, villainous. On top of that, the character is repeatedly dead-named and misgendered by the protagonists, one of whom went on a rather epic pro-trans rant about respecting identity, respecting gender pronouns. And then almost immediately, York sets about disrespecting the identity of a trans person, using their given name rather than the name they actually go by and identify with as some sort of gotcha. as writer Laura Kate Dale pointed out. And that kicked off what I called in my Gimpressions a whirlwind of dead naming and very sketchy content. And this came at a time where figures like J.K. Rowling are trying to debate the existence of trans people, where self-styled, gender-critical turf bastards are getting in bed with right-wing fundamentalists because they hate trans people more than they hate actual homophobes. And it was a particular shame in the case of Deadly Premonition 2 because I'd like to believe that York's original pro-trans rant about how transphobia sucks is genuine, and that Swery, who got a lot of praise for The Missing, which had very critically acclaimed trans representation, does, in his awkward way, have his heart in the right place. It's worth noting that The Missing had actual trans consultancy in the writing process, and Deadly Premonition 2 did not. And in the case of Deadly Premonition 2, it does seem as if the director, it does seem as if Swery acknowledges that he may have hurt people and that he regrets it and that he wants to make it right. Which is at least notable in an age where people get called out for their bigoted views and then double down on them and whine about being cancelled rather than actually examine the shit tumbling out of their mouths. So Swery made a statement, which of course is now drowned in responses from that aforementioned gamer TM demographic, who are saying, don't apologise, don't ever be sorry, don't censor yourself, don't change anything. Which, by the way, is just a shitty attitude to have in life generally. I mean, what kind of life do you have that is so bereft of remorse for people who have been hurt? What kind of emotionally and intellectually stunted person are you that you feel you should never have to apologise, never have to examine what you've done, never learn, never grow, never change? It's just always been weird to me. Well, anyway, it doesn't seem like Swery is one of those people. He seems like someone who actually respects art and the power art has to move and indeed to hurt. And this is what he's acknowledged in a statement, which I will read out verbatim now. Be aware there's some broken English in there, but I'll just read it as it was written. Dear DP fans, I would like to tell important message. I realised by pointing out from friends I might have hurt transgender people in my scenario. It wasn't intentional. I am really sorry for that. Some scenes will be sanity checked by a team that included diversity, and I will rewrite that scene ASAP. So please continue to support Deadly Premonition. I'm the one writing the scenario, so the characters are not responsible. My fault. Please don't hate them. Swery. Now that last point, please don't hate them. That little bit at the end did make me go, oh, because, and I can only interpret some of this, it's clear that Swery loves the characters that are in his games. I love the characters that are in his games. Agent York Morgan is one of the most memorable protagonists in any video game I've ever played. From his jerk with a heart of gold persona, to his weird discourse with Zack, to his in-depth discussions of movies, to the fact that he's unfazed by the weirdest, most fucked up shit, but utterly amazed by the mundane. York's just brilliant, and I love him, and it's clear Swery loves him too, and wanted York to be very pro-trans. So that's part of what made the whole dead naming and misgendering issue so heartbreaking, and it's what made it leave such a sour taste. And I think Swery acknowledges and understands that. If we take the initial pro-trans stuff that York does at face value, it would be clear to me that Swery wants York to be a pro-trans character. And if that's the intention, then the dead naming and the misgendering that comes later is absolutely a mistake on the part of the creator. Swery wants people to love York. I want people to love York. I want to love York. All of my criticism of Deadly Premonition 2 has come from a place of love. It's come from a place of wanting to love the game more, of wanting to embrace Deadly Premonition 2 more. It's clear that's what Swery wants as well. He wants as many people to unabashedly love the Deadly Premonition series as possible, which of course is a noble goal. And if he wrote a pro-trans character who then did transphobic things, that would be a mistake, a creative mistake, and it's one that Swery wants to fix. And that's what gets me about the people now accusing Swery of censoring himself, or bowing to pressure, or pandering to people. Swery set out with a creative intention. What the game accomplished and what it intended did not line up. And due to the nature of video games as a medium, Swery has a chance to evolve Deadly Premonition 2 and bring it more in line with his original vision. He wants to, he's going to update the game to reflect that intention. And that is what happens with video game patches and fixes and redos all the time. There's only one difference between this and the other games that get changed that no one complains about. And that difference is the aforementioned narrow definition of politics. Well, I for one am thrilled that Swery takes his work seriously and wants to live up to his creative ambitions. What the result will be remains to be seen. Now, everything I say here of course comes with the caveat that I'm a cis guy, I cannot speak to the trans experience. I don't want to put words in people's mouths or speak for them, so on a personal level I'll just say that I found some of the content in Deadly Premonition 2 uncomfortable. And I'm glad that the team is at least taking it seriously, you know? Because like I said, I want to unequivocally love these games. So I'll just leave it here, right? I will keep an eye on the game's development as it continues, and we'll see what they do about the frame rate, we'll see what they'll do about the content, and then maybe I'll do another sort of revisit of the game, and we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed. Because like I said, I want to fucking love this thing.